Hello, I'm Hogne, medical advisor in Eqology, and today I have the pleasure, together with Erik Alexander Richter, to talk to you about vitamin K2 combined with vitamin D3. So this special occasion is that we now have the K2-D3 vegan product, and that the two of us will talk a little more about. So here is the product. We know that the amount of vegan people in Europe is increasing. And for a long, long time, the vegan people has asked Eqology to come up with the product that they also could take advantage of. And here is the product. And what we know have been able to put together is a product that contains 200 microgram K2 when you take two small syringes or pipettes from this vial that contains K2-D3. And in addition, you will, through these two pipettes that will in total give you 1 milliliter, have 50 microgram of vitamin D3. And this is vitamin D3 that is then not a D2. It's a 125 dihydrocholecalciferol, and that has the double effect of vitamin D2 that normally has been used in vegan products. The product is then diluted in MCT oil. It's a natural product with natural taste, and the D3 product is approved by the Vegan Society, and it's a VitaShine TM, a branded vitamin D3 included. So this new product that we perhaps should have launched a long time ago is now available for you, that you vegan people have the same opportunity to have enough vitamin K2 and D3 as we offer to all other people within Eqology. And here is then one of the reasons why we will advise everybody to take the product. And Erik, perhaps you should say then why it's so important that all people take the product.
Well, K2 and D3 is it's like not a luxurious product. It's a necessity to be healthy. But the European community is like highly complicated. In every country, they say the maximum doses here is such, and there it is that. And then for children or certain ages, they make it complicated to work with the current capsules we have. And especially for the vegan community, it was very difficult to get sufficient D3. It still is, but we come much closer today. So, for example, during pregnancy, the mom really should take sufficient amount of D3 to make sure she reaches this like 125 nanomoles, because that's the minimum level she needs to be able to breastfeed her children afterwards. If she does so, then the D3 is very protective for many diseases for the children. It even protects her to not lose bone minerals. But obviously, the K2 has the same. If you combine this with a healthy lifestyle, with physical exercise and all those things, then it really benefits the health of your bones, your immune system, and many, many more. And now you can just adjust where you want to go. Because let's not forget, I mean, we would love to have it brought earlier, but the D3 from a vegan resource is just a very recent discovery. I will get back to that later. But if you can maintain an optimum level of K2 and D3 during your life cycles, including, again, physical exercise, you'll be just a different person. You age slower, you have many better repair systems in the body, you have stronger bones, cleaner arteries, a better brain function, everything just works better. And then it also keeps your arterial walls clean. Obviously, you need to combine it with magnesium, but also on that, I get back later. But
And
now
Erik, I just will underline to you that it is so important then that we have enough vitamin D3. And when you are talking about the concentration we should have in the body to have sufficient support to the immune system, sufficient support to all the other functions in the body, it's mandatory for most people. And remember, it was vitamin D that was the source and the reason why the Norwegian and Scandinavian used cod liver oil in the very
Yes.
beginning. So that's another part of it. And also when we are producing products now for all over Europe, that means that we need to have products that are in compliance with regulatory authorities all over Europe. And that is why in one recommended dosage of this new product, you will have 50 microgram of vitamin D3. That is the upper limit in most countries in Europe. But please, Eric, continue more about vitamin D3 and tell a little about why this vitamin is so mandatory for us.
Well, there is an incredible amount of research on D3. I mean, if you look at it, just type this in, I think, yesterday. So we're talking about end of June 2024. There is about 2,000, no, there is over 100,000 studies published. And you can see it started all the way back in 1922 when we first experienced children with rickets, the bended bones, and with asthma variants and all that. And a little by little, officially D3 is a hormone. It's made from cholesterol, so it's a steroid, I should say. But you can still see after all those years the massive amount of more research the last few decades. So more and more people are figuring out this is a necessity. But it is also important to not overdose it, because if you take it as an overdosage, following will happen. You just mentioned the cod liver oil, and in the early days, you took a concentrate with high levels of vitamin D3 and A. And if you take a ton of D3 and no vitamin A, then you can get this out of balance. Now, why don't we add vitamin A into this product? Because it's also necessary for people who are pregnant, and then you got to be very, very careful. But again, 105 studies, and we can talk, well, of course, days about this, but I just picked out one from 2014. And on the right side, you can see where it says low vitamin D3. That's the 20 nanomoles, or between 0 and 9 nanograms per ml. That's a very low dosage. Now, your doctor has potentially two reference values. Some are okay with 30 nanomoles, so that's the higher scale. And that's not what you take, that is what is measured in the blood. And because then you know that, for example, obese people need to take way more D3 to get the same level. It's not easy. For them, the sun might be better. But 30 is very low. And then the curve goes kind of down. And then you can see how much you need to have a much lower risk. So on the left side of this graph, on the right side, it says hazard ratio. And the 0 point of the 1.00, that's the reference line. You go lower than that, it's fantastic. You go above it, it's not so good. So you can see a low vitamin D3 raises the risk for all-cause mortality with 90%. That's a dramatic difference. And you go down to 50 nanomoles, it's already back to 40% more. Still not good, but less risky. And the optimum levels, you reach about 120 to 140 nanomoles. That's kind of more is not beneficial. And if you can take that value and combine it with K3 and magnesium, you have the absolute benefit from this.
Yeah.
Well, that's all
and,
cool.
and Eric, I just will say that in addition to that, the Norwegian took this cod liver oil. We had a very special professor in oncology treating cancer patients. And his major statement was that everybody should be out in the sun at least 20 minutes every day to let the body generate enough vitamin D3 itself. And what we have learned also now during the COVID period, you have seen that D3 is extremely important for the immune system. And when we talk about the values you are talking about, the optimal values of a D3 level in the body, that is not from the capsule or the product alone. It's because we need to have an active lifestyle outdoor and have sufficient amount of sun exposure. I know you come back to that. But this is why we now see that, yes, with the lifestyle in itself, combined with this product, we should be able to approach the optimal D3 level for the body. Back to you.
And that's why the testing is important. And like in this time of the year in June, again, now it's quite sunny. So I'll be outside at least half an hour with my upper body without any clothes, so I can build up the right values in there. Um, it takes a while before it all gets the way into the body, but that's the optimum level. On one serious sunny day, if you have enough sun exposure, don't get burned, very important, you can build up like 25,000 units, or a massive dosage, and that as a feedback loop, so you can never overdose with the sun as long as you don't get a sunburn. But again, these are great talks. The vegan people had to be out in the sun all year long because there wasn't a good resource available for the D3, because it comes from what we call lanosterol. Lano in Latin is sheep. So the sheep wool has lanosterol on top, but we have that in our skin as well. And if you radiate that with UVB light, then it produces this vitamin D3, which is from an animal source. Of course, they don't have to kill the animal for that. They just shave off the wool, radiate it, wash it, and then take out the D3. But today, and today, I mean, just a few years ago, they figured out that there are certain fungi, like as you see them here and growing on stone. And if these fungi are very healthy and they have a mix with cyanobacteria and different types of fungi combined, now if you irradiate these with sunlight, you can actually derive vitamin D3, highly effective, from 100% vegan resource. So that's hugely beneficial. Obviously, this is not a very cheap way to produce it, but at least it is available. But as you just mentioned, Hogne, and your oncologist professor, what did they say? You got to go in the sun, because the sun is the best resource. The only negative part on the sun is that if you overexpose, you could also damage your skin. But we do know that people who love the sun and are a little bit careful and take the right food, they outlive other people as well, because the sun exposure has much more benefit than just D3. But if you follow this guy, his legs are in the sun, his arms are in the sun, the skin is protected, then 80% of the vitamin D3 produced in his skin gets into the body. Takes a little while, so don't take a shower with soap right afterwards. And now it goes to the liver, to the kidneys, and it produces different shapes of D3, different forms, biochemical forms. You do require some magnesium there, and then it can have a function on the cell membrane, as you see in the right lower corner, or on the DNA. So you have a nuclear function and you have a non-nuclear function. The non-nuclear has anything to do partly with inflammation, but mostly with calcium and mineral transport. So make that not too technical, but here is your beautiful cell. The outside has the receptors, including D3 receptors, and the inside, the little bit purple thing, that's the cell nucleus, and there's all the DNA functions. There was hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of functions where we do need this vitamin D3. And if you're not having sufficient of D3, some of these functions will just disappear. Okay, you can see here in this beautiful image, the right top corner, all the way down, that's at one cell membrane from one cell, just one whatever cell. And you can see in the drawing on the left corner how many of these little VDRs, vitamin D receptors, are in the inside or are in the membrane. And this membrane with all these receptors, these colorful little images there on the membrane, that's like the keyboard of your computer. That is how you operate your cell. And then it goes from there into all the way down in the nucleus with genetic functions. And here, for example, comes something interesting. If you take more vitamin D3, either by sun or supplement, and I take like one capsule of K2+D3 in the summer, and I may take two in the winter at two different moments because the lack of sunshine. And now you get these nuclear functions. That means something happens in your DNA. And one of the interesting things is we also know about K2, but it is the D3 with the magnesium needs to be activated. Now tells the right gene to produce two proteins. And one is called osteocalcin, and the other one is called MGP from matrix GLA protein. So more sunshine, more D3, the molecule comes in, has a genetic function, and now it produces two new proteins. Once these proteins are in circulation, and it does, again, it's hundreds and hundreds of more function, but let's focus currently on these. So we see this little guy in the sun on the skin. The D3 is produced. It has D3 from the food or for, let's say, the Nordic energy booster. Osteocalcin and matrix GLA protein is formed in the DNA, but it's not very effective. You can tenfold the efficacy if you now add K2. And K2 is like a switch, and it says you need to start up the engine. There is the K2 coming in, and it activates something. We call it carboxylation. But let's say now the molecule is in full power, it's carboxylated, and now it starts to improve your bone mineral density. And where does it get the minerals from? It takes it out of the arteries, even if it's just free floating or it just got stuck somewhere where you don't want to have it. And this is exactly what we like to have. This carboxylated form is so much more effective. I mean, Hogne, you published many studies on this K2, how this works, and how what it does. Now, here, let me show you the animation. These are the little things in the bone, but maybe you talk about it because this is your expertise.
And
Osteoclast.
here we see then these red things. That was the osteoclasts that are taking away some bone matrix, and here comes the osteoblast building bone. And the important thing is that every day our bone structure is remodulated all the time. And that is not only because of what we are eating and how much we take of omega-3, K2, D3, but also how we use the body, how we use the bone, how we are outdoor, how we use the muscles. So this is the dynamic. But we know that all these kind of connections means that if we then can activate the right proteins the best way with K2 and D3 that make the osteoblasts produce more of both osteocalcin and of matrix GLA protein, then we will have strong bone that are flexible and work better all the time. So this it's no secret. It's just to say this, in addition to a healthy, active lifestyle, the K2D3 will help you to get close to the optimal version of your bone structure. And the pictures here where we saw some bone cells, the osteoclast are taking out some structure and the osteoblast building new one, that is the past of the history, why we can have healthy bone very long in our lifespan.
The fibers you see underneath these osteoblast, and in reality, the osteoblast is much smaller than the osteoclast. But the fibers you see, that's the collagen. So the collagen you take and you think, oh, that's great for the skin. It is, but it starts in the bone. So if you got a strong bone structure, you need the collagen, you need vitamin C, you need the magnesium, and you actually also need omega-3 because the relation is what you just mentioned, Hogne. This bone stuff is alive all year long, and if you are physical active, you have this dynamic osteogenesis. Beautiful words. This is the production of new bone. It's renewed every day, but how it's renewed depends completely on your lifestyle. So we need more collagen, vitamin C, magnesium, and the omega-3 because these guys, the blue ones here, the osteoblast, tell the osteoclast, hey, I experience a lot of inflammation. So now you need to take more calcium from the bone because we need it for the inflammatory process. And once the inflammation is gone, with the help of enough D3 and omega-3, then the osteoblast will rebuild. But if if the omega-3 is lacking, this taking away calcium from the bone goes on, which in the end leads to osteopenia or osteoporosis. So you see, it's never one ingredient. You take this pill and now you're happy. It won't work like that. You need an active lifestyle and combine them. And then all the research then shows this is going to work. But let's go more to your topic and explain Hogne, about the differences between the K1 and the K2? Because many doctors don't seem to get the difference.
And the meaning of vitamin K in the beginning was coagulation. Vitamin K1 is the vitamin that is needed to initiate a normal coagulation, stopping a bleeding in the body. And that is what still is the hang up of the medical environment, that they associate this function with all kind of vitamin K, including vitamin K2. So therefore, we have then the challenge in ecology to educate the whole medical environment and let them understand that vitamin K1 is for coagulation, and that is found in green and leafy vegetables. But the K2 is another molecule very similar to K1, but is made through fermentation performed of specific bacteria, and K2 is not found in green vegetables. And here is also another picture showing us that the K2 is found mostly in the natto food to the right in this figure with a very high bar. So if one Japanese person take one lunch with natto, fermented soybeans, he will get around 1 milligram or 1,000 microgram of vitamin K2, and we recommend normal healthy people to take around 200 micrograms. So this is five-fold more that they get in a normal food for all kind of healthy people. We see it's also some vitamin K2 in fermented cheeses. You see one in the middle of the figure. But for the K1, it's the green vegetables. We see the green bar little more to the left of the very high blue bar.
Yeah, the natto comes in little boxes with about 30 grams of this fermented stuff, and then it's more functions. It's the natto with richness in K2, but also natto kinase, which is like an enzyme, is really good to breaking down proteins, even getting rid of spike proteins from COVID. It is very effective if you combine it with curcuma and with bromelain, which is an enzyme that comes from pineapple. Then you can also see something else, the margarine from plant oils. That's to be avoided at any cost because that's the one causing skin cancer with the sunlight. Whereas if you look at butter, butter really used to have some K2 in there. And the moment they took out the butter, the cardiovascular disease never went lower. It just went up because they replaced it with the wrong oils. And we don't see much cardiovascular disease in France somehow, and they eat all these beautiful fermented cheeses.
But this picture also should be a very strong reminder, saying that it's up to 0% of the population in Europe that will get enough K2 just to the normal diet. That is why we have to be advocates for the K2 products, dietary supplements that we offer.
Very, very important. Good. Okay, on the right top, it says to get 45 micrograms of K2 from the diet. You can see a bunch of that stuff. That's a lot of product you need to take. And 45 micrograms is like the RDA, but that's something different from the optimum dosage. Every time you double this, the efficacy becomes better up to 200. And then once you go higher, you have to really spread it over the day. Otherwise, the efficacy is not linear anymore. But now the vegan people, the K2 already was vegan, but what else can you say? This community is growing. More people who eat and they don't want to have animals suffer from it. What's the challenge for them?
What you see for vegan people, even if they eat very healthy, is that fat-soluble vitamins is a source they need to have in addition to the normal food. And that is why we see, unfortunately, too many deficiency situation for vegan. And Ecology really have the goal to let you in this group have the same possibility of a good health as the rest of the population. So that is why we have now been able then to identify not only the D2, but also the D3 made in a vegan way, not from the wool for the sheep, as Eric talked about, but directly and certificated by the Vegan Society. So therefore, this is really something that should help, and all the activities for healthy bone and flexible arterial walls are important, especially now for you in this group.
And vegan people are supposed to get old as well. So, what
Yeah.
about the elderly people?
And that is what we see always, that when you get older, most people believe that is combined, that we need to suffer. We need to have some bone problems. We need to have some high blood pressure and so on. So therefore, we can postpone these negative development by using the K2, of course, combined with what you have said already, to have the right magnesium, the right diet, and also be outdoor.
But Hogne, I mean, you have been in this medical field for so many years. A lot of people, they go to the doctor and then they have a check on the blood pressure, and the doctor says, well, okay, you are whatever 68, your blood pressure is the upper level is 140. It's not bad for your age. Is that true? Is there such a thing as an age-related blood pressure, or how would you see that?
We see when that has been a lot of the clinical studies done in people for different ages, that if you don't do anything and just accept that nature is like nature is, with the eating habits we have and other things, then we see a decline in effects in a lot of the organs. But that is the whole thing we are working with. We have by knowledge learned more and more and see which elements are then the reason why we don't are able to have the same kind of physical activity as before. So therefore, in fact, to be old in age is not the same to be old in biology. So it's a lot of things everyone can do, and the toolbox we have is something that is available for people that will like to have an active lifestyle as long as possible.
Even for sports people, there's not a reason to say, okay, at a certain age, let's stop doing sports. I mean, you can give it a different name. You can do more walking. You can do more, a little bit more relaxing or whatever. I mean, I guess still snowboarding, and you can optimize your muscle function, which is so important. Not because you want to have big arms or anything like that, because every time you use your muscle, you take the stairs, you go skiing, you do work in the garden. Every time you do that on any given age is an improvement for the brain, because you do something, it generates dopamine, which is great for the frontal lobes in the brain. But you, with physical exercise, you also activate something that's called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. If that's fantastic, just to keep the brain fresh, and you can work out at any age. I mean, I'm nearly 63, and my biceps are still there because I use it. And I can also say, yeah, but I don't need it anymore. So why? Because if I say I don't need the arm, I probably lose the brain as well. So that's the athletes.
Yeah. And this picture just point to that in all periods in life, there are biological functions that will work better, more optimal, if we then will utilize the capacity of the different proteins involved. So what Eric talked about in the beginning, that if we carboxylated some proteins, they could have tenfold as good effect in the body. And this is the case from children, menopausal women, for men, elderly people, for vegan. So this is the whole thing. If we know that something is important to enhance the function of the body, then we should use it. And that is the case for vitamin K2.
But now, Hook, the K2, meanwhile, everybody seems to understand, and you see K2 pop up everywhere, but they don't seem to be all the same, do they?
The molecule is the same. When we talk about the menaquinone 7, that is a defined molecule that has a long side chain that we also know have specific receptor affinity and then binding to specific places in different tissues and give the effect. But we see that there are differences then between what they call nature identical molecules and molecules that nature has made. And what we know is that Ecology is offering you the natural vitamin K2, and that also happens to be the molecules where all the fundamental clinical studies have been done. We know that this natural product is what has been used in long-term studies where we have shown and documented health benefits for the bone and for the cardiovascular system. So that is why I think that we are very proud to use the branded Pioneer vitamin K2 product, where we have all this documentation behind. And this gives also a security that what we are offering to people is something that really works. And when you have synthetic things made in the laboratory, it always a small danger that there are some tiny small parts that are coming into the body that the body never have seen before, nature never have seen before, that perhaps can give us non-wanted effects. So therefore, it's just as going for the main brand, then vitamin K2, Menacu7 is the best, the pioneer. And here we see a little how it's produced. It starts then with fermentation of, in our case, chickpea, and then it's a special bacteria strain that from this fermentation are making the vitamin K2 or Menacu7. So you will have more or less a big pot where you have this fermented soup or whatever you call it. And from that, you concentrate, take out the vitamin K2 molecule, you purify it, and then you make it into a formulation where it will be stable molecule as long as it is there before we take it. And I think it's important to say that that this fermentation site where this product is made in Europe, and in fact the only high quality GMP facility for dietary supplement in Europe.
So it's clear to say that just eating either chickpeas or soy is absolutely not the solution. You do need this specific bacteria to for the fermentation, right?
That is absolutely right.
Good. Clinically proven. That must be your absolute specialty because you published with other people, even with some people I know in the Netherlands. You published a ton of studies on that stuff.
Yeah, and this is really to show that one thing is to have the pure product, but also that it works, that it will do this carboxylation of molecules, that for long-term studies in healthy people compared to a placebo group gives these effects that we are talking about, especially for bone and the cardiovascular system. So you can take some of the next pictures. This is what you, Eric, already talked about, showing us that Menacu7 is then activating, carboxylating these proteins that are made. And the production of these proteins were very much facilitated by vitamin D3, as we have talked about. But to have them tenfold more active, then we need the K2. And again, yeah, and again, and this is, sorry, you take this one, Eric.
Well, it is. You need one with the other. Just K2 without the D3 won't work because you can only carboxylate what is there, and it only gets there when you take the D3. And again, let's not forget, if you want to have the active D3, you do need the magnesium. So this all comes together, and then it works in synergy. There is never a one molecule that's going to save you from whatever what. And still, strong bones require physical activity. So you have dynamic osteogenesis, so building strong bones. That's how they come in together. And that's how they can take the calcium from locations you don't want to have it and bring it back into the bones. But you can see here on the right graph, the green field, that this is, again, these graphs you see, that is the average bone mineral density, what women and men have at a certain age. But that doesn't mean that it should be like this. We have to understand specifically with women, if they go into this premenopausal years, during these 5 years, they lose approximately 2.5% bone mass per year. Now, if you come in this period with 100% bone mass, which rarely happens because we're not physical active anymore, and then you lose 12.5%, that is still kind of okay. But if your bone isn't already at top quality, but so, and you lose it, then you go into the menopause probably with already osteopenia or even osteoporosis, which is really, really, really dangerous. I can't emphasize it enough. Breaking a hip for a woman or a man actually in that period of life has like a 20% risk of dying within a year because of the complications of a broken hip. So stay physical active. You can see here 75 million people in just Europe, US, and Japan have already osteoporosis, and many other ones are on the way going there. You don't want to have that. Very high risk. Now, men do not suffer as much from it as women because they have more testosterone, at least in most cases. That should be the way. And so that's a bit protective. But your peak bone mass is around 30. And then if you keep on working out and you take magnesium K2+D3 and sunshine and you keep on pushing the muscles and the bone, it's great for the brain, but it is very important to not go in this like the women have the number 2 here, the menopausal bone mass loss. It shouldn't be like that. And you can even see it. This is probably one of the studies you did, is if you give the product versus the placebo, then the placebo group really loses bone mass. So they constantly rebuild bone, but not as effective as it used to be. And then this was done in a 3-year period where they already lost, let me see quickly, about 3%. So that's 1% the bone mass per year. Or this is the impact strength index, or the compression strength index. That's how you push it or how you bend it, and then the other way around. But maybe you can say something about this.
Yeah, but this is the upper line show the Menaco 7 vitamin K2 groups, where we reduce and the loss of bone strength with around 75-80% during this period. And that is really the message that by using this tool, in addition to all the other things, we may postpone this very weak bone things with osteopenia, osteoporosis with another 20 years. So then that means that hiking and all physical activity then need bone strength can continue for another 20, 30 years. So of course, all of us would like to be active and live healthy as long as possible. And we don't promise anyone to be extremely old, but at least they should be able to have a good time when they are here regarding bone and the cardiovascular system.
But it does work if you combine it with the collagen and all the other stuff we mentioned during this thing. I mean, I've been mountain biking and make a salto and not landing on the wheels again, let's say it like that, or with snowboarding sometimes some serious crashes. I try to avoid it, but it still happens. I mean, otherwise you can't go snowboarding. But until now, I never broke anything. I never had any trouble with that. But this is the kind of thing I like. Where's the calcium coming from? It comes from the location you don't want to have it. You don't want to have it in your blood vessel walls. You don't want to have the frozen shoulder, the heel spur, the kidney stones, the calcium deposits in breast tissue for women, or even in the skin. You can sometimes see it. So it just relocates the calcium to the location where it should be. You combine it with an active lifestyle, because just the pill is not going to do it. But you combine it with the magnesium, with the K2+D3, with the physical exercise, being outside in the sun, and you just have a different life. And the sun has even a better effect on the blood vessels, because it takes care about something we call vasodilation. If it doesn't get too hot, if it gets too hot, it actually constricts and protects you from, burning. But anyway, pioneering to shape K2. When did it start, the K2? Was it in the end of the 90s where the University of Maastricht did the first research?
I had a discussion with Leon Schurgers, that is a professor in Maastricht, and he'd been working with K2 for a long time. And he said that, in fact, when they started to work with K2 was in 2004. Before that, you talked about different vitamin K dependent proteins, but vitamin K2, that was different from K1, is rather new thing then, from around 2004. And then this last slide, just points to that vitamin K2 doesn't only activate osteocalcin and matrix GLA protein, but it's a lot of other proteins also that are carboxylated by vitamin K2. And the figure shows that there are promising data saying that by having enough of this carboxylation vitamin K2, it's important for delayed development of metabolic disease, as it's important for your cognitive function. We have already talked about the inflammatory situation. We have talked about sports, that you have a faster recovery. And also when you come to other tissues for skin, it's important. And I'm quite sure that just as for omega-3, it's some of these compounds that are involved in so many parts in the body that when people in the medical area ask Eric and me in 40 years, why didn't you tell us these things beforehand? And we have to answer that you didn't listen. We tried to explain you something here, but here we see the advantages for the whole body. But where it's most documented is for bone and the cardiovascular system. So I think, Eric, you can finish up, but this is something that we think everybody that would like to stay healthy as long as possible and get a good life should take into their body to secure we have enough of this product.
And we keep on reading and studying about it. One of the reasons in skin health, for example, is we have the collagen network in the skin, but you also have elastin. So if you pull the skin and hopefully it pops back, that's elastin. But these elastin fibers are extremely sensitive for calcification. Once they get calcified and the immune system then becomes activated, breaks down these elastin fibers. So you lose elasticity in the skin. That's the skin health. But we have seen this dramatically by a research of the University of Nijmegen in the Netherlands during the COVID times, because you have a lot of elastin fiber in the lung tissue. And to make sure it doesn't get calcified, you definitely need the K2. But they figured out that the ones on the ventilators, the ones with the strongest lung damage because of the inflammatory process in the lungs during COVID, they had dramatic damage, and those were the people with the lowest levels of K2. So it protects so much more than just only the arteries and the stronger bones. Okay, so take it, and I'm pretty much sure, Hogne, if we talk about this again in 5 years from now, we have more reasons why we have to do it. But just to be sure, take it already today. Thank you so much for watching. Use it.
Thank you, and thank you, Eric, and see you soon wherever around Europe. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.